Since the release of the Coros Pace 2, the brand has garnered not only my attention, but millions of runners and triathletes and ultra runners alike. All while vying for the attention Garmin has more than earned over the last 20 years. Coros has released their latest edition, the Pace 3, so now I've opted to put forth the cash to buy myself a new running watch, as I have been an Apple Watch user since the very first Apple Watch was released. Hello and welcome back to the Time to Run channel, where I do most of the research so you don't have to do it all on your own. My name is Joel, and today we're going to be talking about the Coros Pace 3. This lightweight running watch has become my primary running companion since I purchased it back in September, and I really have to say it's been a really enjoyable experience so far. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk about my experience using the Coros Pace 3. Now, for this review of one of Coros' most competitively priced watches, I wanted to cover a few things that caught my attention and had me picking this as my next training watch. Because there's nearly an endless amount of things I could cover, I wanted to boil this review down to only a few things, and ultimately what led me to buy the watch versus continuing to use the Apple Watch versus choosing other brands as well. This video will be less of a how-to and more like a features, specs, and reasons why you might consider getting this watch type of video. Now, there might be additional subjects you want me to cover that are not in this video. If that's the case, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I'll work on putting together supplemental videos to answer your questions left in the comments. Don't be shy, write them out below. So those of you who have been using the Pace 2, what notable updates can you expect? Let's cover those now. The battery, which may or may not be a noticeable change for you if you have a Pace 2. Ultimately, the Pace 3 has an upgraded battery, giving Pace 3 users an even better battery experience than before. We'll talk more about the battery further in this review. Next, an SpO2 sensor has been added. If you're not familiar with what this feature entails, it simply measures the amount of oxygen found in your red blood cells, how efficiently your body is working at taking in oxygen, creating oxygen-rich blood in the lungs, and ultimately delivering it to your heart. As athletes, it's very important to know this for a few reasons. One being, are you supplying your body with enough oxygen during your workouts? If you have shallow breathing or poorly timed breathing, you may find yourself struggling more with your workouts and ultimately your races. But if you're efficiently delivering oxygen while still struggling, there may be other factors to consider and even address if no environmental factors have changed. Something I got really excited about was the update of adding dual band GPS. So now the Coros Pace 3 gives you more accurate GPS data and less likely for you to experience those random straight lines you see on your Strava maps every once in a while when you go back to check your workout route. This is something I'm especially looking forward to for my next races, and including dense forest coverage or races through cities where one band GPS may not give you the most accurate data due to the buildings in that city. The next thing I'll cover is regarding the optical heart rate sensor, which is indicated by the green light on the bottom of the watch. As a personal note, it's really close to the numbers I get currently on my Apple Watch. I'll cover more heart rate related topics later in this review. If you want to skip ahead, check out the chapters below to jump to that now. Okay, moving on. Barometric altimeter for more improved altitude accuracy. Even though technically there was a reading for this in the Coros Pace 2, now an actual sensor has been added rather than using GPS triangulation for elevation estimating. Next, the watch has been updated with a stronger haptic motor, and it has apparently louder tones. This will help out during interval sessions and other training sessions, especially while on windy days on the bike or when you're out on a swim. An update you've probably already seen, but it's a new update regardless. Since the release of the Pace 2, there's now an activity battery indicator, meaning if you were to go out for a run, how many hours you have available to you to complete that workout. A really awesome software update. So they've taken the guesswork out of having to figure it out yourself. If you were planning on a 4-hour run and you have 3 hours at your disposal, then you can plan accordingly now. Okay, I think that wraps up most of the notable feature differences you can expect from the Pace 2 to the Pace 3. Let's get into some features others will appreciate if you're unfamiliar with using Coros devices. Current pricing is $229 before tax, barring any discounts you can find for the Pace 3. This is just slightly more expensive than the Pace 2, yet it's still really inexpensive when compared to other contenders. And the last spec I'll cover is the weight, which weighs in at 30 grams. So this makes for a very lightweight running and multi-sport watch indeed. Now let's talk about the battery life, which is phenomenal. And likely if you're watching this video, you already have heard about the amazing battery life, even if you have never tried the Coros watches before. If I'm not mistaken, Coros is the watch brand that has the best battery life in the business above all other brands in its class. Now, while there are many nuances, and I did already cover some of the default battery expectations in the specs portion of this video, I'll share with you that the battery life lives up to the expectations. At one point, about 16 or so days, it felt weird not to charge it, as I had a pretty solid habit of charging my Apple Watch so frequently prior. It was about halfway down, and on another time when I had waited approximately 22 days, and with some activities draining the charge and dual satellite enabled, from when I plugged it in at 9% all the way to 100%, it took only less than an hour and a half to fully charge. In my testing, in order to charge 10% of the battery, it took me about 7 minutes. It took me 36 minutes to charge from 67% to 100, charging 33% in a little over half an hour. I don't know if you caught the math, but you may have noticed it was more speedy at charging when at lower percentages, between 10%. However, as the charge got closer to 100%, it slowed down quite a bit. Based upon the initial charging results of 7 minutes per 10% charged, it should have taken 21 or 22 minutes to charge from 67 to 100%, give or take a few minutes. In this video, you'll notice as it approaches 100%, it starts at about a percentage to a minute to charge, but the closer it gets to 100%, it increases from 2 minutes per percentage and even up to 3 minutes per percentage charged. A lot of data right there. I'm sorry if it was like drinking from a fire hose, but yeah. So my guess is that Coros has some kind of automation or battery charging setting built into the firmware to slow the charge over the last few percentages. And it also gives different charges based upon if you're going to be using it for normal standard use and also non-GPS use workouts or with GPS workouts. Starting at 100% charge, you can expect to get 24 to 25 days battery life of standard use or about 27 hours of GPS activity use. At least that's what the watch says itself when I prepare to start a running workout. I've seen other stats that say you can get another 10 hours of GPS mode use, so around 38 hours. But as far as what the watch says, it's 27 hours. And I haven't seen 38 hours used on the workout screens myself when I go to start a workout. It appears people who have used this number 38 hours are getting it from the battery menu, which I'll show here on the screen, which is actually different from the number you get in the workout menus. This same menu, though, it says I should get about 16 days of battery use, but I've got close to 21 before I needed to charge it. You can get different time estimates based upon what kind of workout you're telling the watch you want to do. A pool swim, the watch estimates you can get 44 hours, which isn't tied in with GPS. However, an open swim that's tied in with GPS estimates 28 hours. An indoor run, 44 hours, and a trail run using GPS is supposed to give you about 28 hours. This is different from what the watch said originally, which is 38 hours. Another factor to consider regarding the battery for me and the other Apple Watch users is by the end of my last marathon, my Apple Watch was about to die, being that it had less than 10% battery left. As most Apple Watch users know, if you're out on a workout, especially cellular, and you only have 10% battery left in your workout, you run the risk of your watch immediately shutting off. 10% for an Apple Watch during a workout might as well be considered 1%. As a reference, I've been out on my runs with an Apple Watch, and it's notified me I have 10% battery remaining, then promptly force quits the fitness app I'm using and has even immediately died after the first 10% notification. Lesson learned there, never go out on a run, even on a shorter run, when your battery on your Apple Watch is below 40%. As far as the marathon itself, yes, I did go through the precautions to reduce the likelihood of rapid battery draining, such as turning off Bluetooth, which also means no listening to music, turning off background app refresh, putting my device in focus mode, turning on theater mode, meaning the wrist raise wouldn't activate or turn on the display. I would have to tap the display or press the crown in order to activate the display. And lastly, of course, turning off the always on display, which honestly I have off anyway. Now, as an Apple Watch user, this is undeniably the most notable difference between the two watches, and also probably their biggest selling point. My Apple Watch Series 5 lasts anywhere from 8 hours to 15 hours before I need to recharge it, depending on what my day looks like, if I'm doing any longer sessions or even if I'm traveling. And before you jump on the all too common bandwagon that hates on Apple for building a watch with less than an all-day battery life, you should know no one who buys an Apple Watch does so for its battery. Its function and ecosystem are key reasons why people buy the Apple Watch. And while it is a very significant difference, the standard Apple Watch user isn't prepared to give up the plethora of benefits that only the Apple Watch has simply for the battery life, or lack thereof. But I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this as well, so let's move on. So third-party accessories. I really wanted to cover this because it was a big question that I always had with certain devices if I was going to switch from an Apple Watch to a new device. Third-party accessories. Every one of my third-party accessories I use or have used in the past with no exception paired seamlessly with the Coros Pace 3 watch itself. Stride foot pod, Wahoo sensors such as the ticker heart rate monitor and the Wahoo cadence bike sensor are all sensors that have been easily paired with the watch. It's done on the watch itself, and even though I don't usually run with music anymore, I also found it easily to pair with my Apple AirPods Gen 2 and my MPOW Bluetooth earbuds. So pairing even older generation sensors and listening devices is no problem for this device. If you're finding this video helpful, please take a second to hit the like button and even leave a comment on what's been helpful thus far in the video, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you so much. Let's move on to interval sessions. This was a big thing for me when I started getting more serious about my training. Interval sessions are really easy to build here, whether you're on the track or you're simply implementing splits throughout your out and back runs. You can customize everything from warm-ups, work, cooldowns, and even get as specific as the rest breaks in between your work intervals. Coros users by default, without any extra costs, gives you access to their native workout library. A huge feature if you want to have scheduled, pre-built workouts loaded automatically onto your device. This makes it really easy and simple to follow a training plan and reduces the work users normally put in by building each workout day by day. It also lets you save your own pre-built workouts to a workout library. If you're planning each run day by day or week by week, you can easily just simply add the workout and schedule it for the day from your workout library, and it'll sync to your watch in a flash. Let's talk about trails, maps, routes, and turn-by-turn navigation. How many times have you explored a new city or even just a new trail only to end up getting lost in the process? Well, with Coros' latest firmware update on the Pace 3, you're now able to get turn guidance while using your preloaded map routes. It's especially helpful when you're out in the forest, and it can only be described as a labyrinth with turns everywhere. I went on a few trail runs over the New Year's weekend, and I explored trail sections that were unfamiliar to me from ones I normally run, giving me the run guidance and turn indicators as I approached each transition or intersection. This is a huge feature I really wanted on a new watch that would really help me in the trail running department. Having a dedicated workout profile for trail runs means that I get a bunch of great features, including customizable workout faces, trail incline and decline grades defined by degrees, elevation profiles, and much more to give you at-a-glance data completely customizable to what you want to see during your trail run. And you can pretty much add anything you want as long as Coros has created a profile or page for it. Mapping and navigation is an amazing built-in feature for this watch, so let's cover that next. You can load any route if you have the GPX file for where you want to run. You'll see your route and you can zoom in and out on the map. One thing to note, if you're wanting a map to guide you according to the route, you want to set that up before you start your workout. You have to go into settings, then select navigation. It's in the workout profile. If you want to utilize a route you've loaded on the watch before you start the run, you'll want to go into settings and then select navigation. Otherwise, it won't show you the map on the screen as you're running it. The cool thing is even if you forget to set this up, you can actually load it in while you're in during your workout. You just have to go into the tools menu, go to navigation, and then load the route, and then it'll pair that up with the existing workout you've already started. The watch will even warn you if you've gone off route and will give you guidance to help you get back on track. Please make sure you're subscribed so you can get notified when I put out more content like this. If there was anything you liked about this video, please let others know by liking and leaving a comment down below. Thanks so much. During workouts or races, if you really want to manually lap, say that despite having dual satellite enabled, maybe you're racing the Chicago Marathon and you're going through the tunnels there, or the marathon near me in North Bend here in Washington State, and you don't have GPS capabilities because you're in 2 miles worth of mountain tunnels. Well, a simple solution is that you can manually lap while racing by pressing the lap button here. This enables you to get a more accurate distance measurement during the event itself. The same lap or power button also comes in handy when you're doing strength training, interval sessions, and cycling workouts. It also enables you to move on to the next set of your workout. So say you're doing an interval training session and you're currently in recovery between intervals. If your recovery session is 30 seconds too long, you can always press the lap or power button to skip the remaining time to start into the next workout interval. Super helpful. So we can cover the display right now. According to Coros, the display apparently has darker blacks and a brighter backlight. I found in my testing that this display really works well in direct sunlight. In this context, it's really crisp and clear. I'll talk more about the cons later in the video. Let's cover another feature that people like to talk about, which is notifications on the watch. Although not possible without a phone, you can get notifications for some things such as texts, which you can read but not reply to, phone calls, which you cannot answer, and other notifications. This is purely there to act more like a pager than a phone or an Apple Watch, which I think falls in line really well with the demographic this watch falls into. This watch, I was really happy with how steady the heart rate indicators were. I didn't feel like I was being pelted with notifications if it went too high or too low within my heart rate range. Next, I want to cover recovery metrics. I'm really excited about this feature. This is one of the things I wanted built into whatever watch I was going to buy next. Apple Watch doesn't actually have this tool currently. I wanted an equivalent to this on the Apple Watch for a while now, and I don't foresee this being developed. It's probably going to happen now that I mentioned it, though. Well, the Coros recovery feature, which is somewhere in line with Garmin's body battery feature, or Stride calls it running stress balance, it pulls data in from multiple sources to give you an estimate for how long recovery will take after workout sessions. So different factors are training load, which includes it at its most general form, the number of times you've worked out in the last 7 days, your heart rate during your workouts, your heart rate variability, workout intensity, and other factors. At this juncture, I'm thinking that the algorithm will take some getting used to at my rhythms. At one point, I came back from a 13-mile run, and it said it would take about 4 days for me to fully recover, which seems like a lot. So TBD if this continues to give me longer than expected recovery times, or if it actually will adapt later on. As I was going through my most recent training block, when I didn't have this, I really just assessed everything day by day. With this tool, I'm excited to use it more in my next training block as it progresses. I'm a little concerned it might be a little overcorrective in estimating my recovery needs, but I haven't reached the point in my next training cycle to verify the accuracy of the recovery metrics. Whereas during my strength training sessions where I totally burned up my legs, well, it counted it as a training session load of 1, basically counting it as inconsequential to my training stress, which I have an issue with. It doesn't factor in the weight I'm lifting to be consequential either. So my reps could be a 5-pound weight, or I could go up to 250 pounds, and believe it or not, it counts as the same stress. How is that? As with everything, I'm just going to take it with a grain of salt. I'm sure the more I run and use the Coros watch, the more it will be able to properly adapt and assess my specific training thresholds and adjust the numbers accordingly, just to make sure you're listening to what your body is telling you. It'll just be a useful tool I have during my training sessions. So with all that being said, as far as incorporating strength training, go off of feel, not what your watch is telling you. Something worth mentioning, if you started doing new activities such as swimming or strength training, you'll still want to consider how you actually feel about your recovery. Especially as we add in new exercises, our muscles will adapt differently to different workouts, and the watch isn't able to detect these physiological changes. So give yourself some extra time for your body to acclimate at first before taking this recovery indicator too literally. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I covered a lot of the pros, a lot of the positive ends of the Coros Pace 3. Well, now I want to cover the cons or the downsides, an integral part of knowing all the advantages and disadvantages of the product that I'm reviewing. So this has been part 1. To view part 2, which covers the cons. So to view the rest of this review, including the cons, comparisons between this and the Apple Watch, whether or not this replaces my Apple Watch, summary, and final thoughts, part 2. So let's dive into part 2 of the Coros Pace 3 watch review. Now, I'll cover the cons and other ways in which it's different and maybe not so great.